Hello, today is Monday, April 7th, 2025, and I'm sitting on a sofa uh, in a shower room or locker room of my company. My company is KT, Korea Telecom, the number one carrier in Korea, and also number one AI slash cloud service provider. There are a lot of turmoils brewing from America regarding tariffs. So we are going to learn about reciprocal tariffs today. This article is from Time magazine, and Time is a very good, renowned magazine. And I read Time magazine for close to 4 years in my college years. It's my go-to source for my English study at the time, and it gave me a lot of vocabulary, and I expanded on it, and so that's why I scored perfect on TOEIC and TOEFL tests. So without any further ado, let's delve in. This article is from Time, and the title is 9 Big Questions About Trump's New Reciprocal Tariffs Answered by Christopher Rugaber and Paul Wiseman, AP. So that's byline. Washington. After weeks of anticipation and speculation, President Donald Trump followed through on his tariff threats this week by declaring a 10% baseline tax on imports from all countries and higher tariff rates on dozens of nations that run trade surpluses with the United States. Global markets cratered, the meteorite cratered the day after the announcement, and then fell further when China announced it would retaliate with tariffs equal to the ones the U.S. is imposing. Right? Crater the day. I think a crater means like a bombarded. In announcing what he has called reciprocal tariffs, Trump was fulfilling a key campaign promise by raising U.S. taxes on foreign goods to narrow the gap with the tariffs the White House says other countries unfairly impose on U.S. products. Trump's higher rates would hit foreign entities that sell more goods to the United States than they buy. But economists don't share Trump's enthusiasm for tariffs since they are a tax on importers that usually get passed on to consumers. It's possible, however, that the reciprocal tariffs could bring other countries to the table and get them to lower their own import taxes. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's the Trump's intention, right? Reciprocal tariffs could bring other countries to the table and get them to lower their own import taxes. Bring other countries to the table. Bring other countries to the table. The Associated Press asked for your questions about reciprocal tariffs, and here are a few of them along with our answers. What is Trump trying to accomplish with his tariffs? It is often unclear what the president's end game is, which adds to the uncertainty surrounding his trade wars. He has given different reasons for his sweeping import taxes, and sometimes they contradict each other. Trump has said that tariffs can raise money for the U.S. Treasury, protect U.S. industries, draw factories to the United States, and serve as a negotiating tactic to get other countries to bend to his will. Whether it means getting them to reduce their own tariffs or to crack down on the illegal flow of drugs and immigrants into the United States, right? Get them to their reduce, bend to, get other countries to bend to his will. Get other countries to bend to his will. But if tariffs mean Americans buy fewer imports, or if countries relocate factories to the United States, then revenue from tariffs will fall, undercutting his plan to use them as a money-generating alternative to the income tax. That's good insight. Trump and his own aides have also offered competing explanations for the sweeping reciprocal tariffs he announced Wednesday. The president on Thursday said the levies give us great power to negotiate and were coaxing another countries into offering to lower their own trade barriers, like a coax, right? Not hoax. Hoax is different. Coax. Every country is calling us, Trump said. That's the beauty of what we do. We put ourselves in the driver's seat, not the driver assistant's seat, right? Driver's seat. The same day, White House trade advisor Peter Navarro told CNBC that the tariffs were meant to stay. The idea is to get companies to produce goods in America, not abroad, bringing down long-standing U.S. trade deficits. Bringing down long-standing, that's another good expression, man. Here, bringing down long-standing U.S. trade deficits. Let me make this very clear, he said. This is not a negotiation. This is not that. This is a national emergency. What is currency manipulation? Currency manipulation takes place when a country deliberately pushes the value of its currency lower, which makes its companies' exports cheaper in foreign markets and gives them an unfair competitive advantage. It can do this by selling its own currency and buying another country's, usually the US dollar, in foreign exchange markets, right? When your Korean won currency fluctuates or it goes up, devaluated, then we make more money, right? We request for less US dollars for the good. In announcing sweeping tariffs this year, Trump has accused other countries of using this tactic to gain an unfair edge over American companies. China, in particular, was notorious for years for manipulating its currency lower to boost exports. But last November, the Biden administration's Treasury Department concluded that no major U.S. trading partner had manipulated its currency to gain an unfair advantage in the fiscal year that ended in June 2024. The U.S. dollar's status as the world's reserve currency, used far more than others in global commerce, tends to keep its value high, which can put U.S. exporters at a disadvantage. Right. When U.S. dollar is very strong, foreign traders cannot buy American export goods because they have to use their own currency more to purchase the same price, same dollar goods. How were the tariffs imposed by Trump calculated? Do other countries really have such high tariffs? According to the Trump administration, the European Union's tariffs and trade barriers against the U.S. amount to a 39% tariff on U.S. goods, while China's, it says, are 67% and India 52%. Those are much higher than what other sources say. The World Trade Organization puts the U.S. average tariffs on all imports at 2.7%, China's at 3%, and India's at 12%. The Trump administration says it is including currency manipulation, government subsidies, and other barriers to trade in its calculations. Trump said Wednesday he was being kind and then charging half what other countries imposed on the U.S. So the U.S. will, as of April 9, impose 20% duties on imports from Europe, 26% on India, and 34% on China. For China, that's in addition to other duties, which means some Chinese goods will face duties as high as 79%. Terrible. Many countries do take other steps besides tariffs to restrict access to their markets. The EU, for example, restricts imports of hormone-treated beef from the US. And what happened? Many countries do take other steps besides tariffs to restrict access to their markets. The EU, for example, restricts imports of hormone-treated beef from the US. And the US government has long complained that China doesn't protect intellectual property such as software made by American companies. Still, those factors don't explain how the administration came up with such high numbers for other countries' tariffs. Instead, the White House says it did a simple calculation. It took the size of each country's trade imbalance on goods with the United States and divided that by how much America imports from that nation. It then took half that percentage and made it a new tariff rate. Let me go over this one more time so that we could clearly understand the logic behind this such a high tariff table. Still, those factors don't explain how the administration came up with such high numbers for other countries' tariffs. Instead, the White House says it did a simple calculation. It took the size of each country's trade imbalance on goods with the United States and divided that by how much America imports from that nation. So if the America imports a lot of goods from Korea, like they buy Hyundai cars, but there's a huge trade balance, then probably the tariff rate is lower because America needs that category of products. It then took half the percentage and made it the new tariff rate. So if they import less and there's a huge trade deficit, and if they put the huge tariff rate, like at 50%, then it would not affect the imported goods that much because they import goods less in the first place. Do U.S. collected tariffs go into the General Revenue Fund? Can Trump withdraw money from that fund without oversight? Tariffs are taxes on imports collected when foreign goods cross the U.S. border by the Customs and Border Protection Agency. The money, about $80 billion last year, goes to the U.S. Treasury to help pay the federal government's expenses. Congress has authority to say how the money will be spent. Trump wants higher tariffs to help offset the lower tax collections. Another think tank, the Tax Policy Center, has said that extending the 2017 tax cuts would deliver continued tax relief to Americans at all income levels, but higher income households would receive a larger benefit. How soon will prices rise as a result of the tariff policy? It depends on how businesses, both in the United States and overseas, respond. But consumers could see overall prices rising within a month or two of tariffs being imposed. For some products, such as produce from Mexico, prices could rise much more quickly after the tariffs take effect. Right? After tariffs take effect. After tariffs take effect. Some U.S. retailers said and other importers may eat part of the cost of the tariff, and overseas exporters may reduce their prices to offset the extra duties. But for many businesses, the tariffs Trump announced Wednesday, such as 20% on imports from Europe, will be too large to swallow on their own. Companies may also use the tariffs as an excuse to raise prices. When Trump slapped duties on washing machines in 2018, studies later showed that retailers raised prices on both washers and dryers, even though there were no new duties on dryers. Yeah. A key question in the coming months is whether something similar will happen again. Economists worry that consumers, having just lived through the biggest inflationary spike in 4 decades, are more accustomed to rising prices than they were before the pandemic. Yet there are also signs that Americans, put off by the rise in the cost of living, are less willing to accept price increases and will simply cut back on their purchases. That could discourage businesses from raising prices by much. What is the limit of the executive branch's power to implement tariffs? Does Congress not play any role? The U.S. Constitution grants the power to set tariffs to Congress, but over the years, Congress has delegated those powers to the president through several different laws. Those laws specify the circumstances under which the White House can impose tariffs, which are typically limited to cases where imports threaten national security or are severely harming a specific industry. In the past, presidents generally imposed tariffs only after carrying out public hearings to determine if certain imports met those criteria. Trump allowed those steps when imposing tariffs in his first term. In his second term, however, Trump has sought to use emergency powers set out in a 1977 law to impose tariffs in a more ad hoc fashion. Trump has said, for example, that fentanyl flowing in from Canada and Mexico constitute a national emergency and has used that pretext to impose 25% duties on goods from both countries. Pretext. Using that pretext to impose 25% duties on goods from both countries. Pretext. pretext, right? Congress can seek to cancel an emergency that President declares, and Senator Tim Kaine, a Democrat from Virginia, has proposed to do just that regarding Canada. That legislation could pass the Senate, but would likely die in the House. Other bills in Congress that would also limit the president's authority to set tariffs face tough odds for passage as well. Face tough odds for passage as well. Right? Face tough odds for passage as well. Well, that's it, right? So thanks for listening. I have a wonderful Monday, but before I go, I would like to go over the expressions that I try to remember, right? Here it is. After the tariffs take effect. After tariffs take effect. Use that pretext to impose 25% duties on goods from both countries. Get tariffs face to set tariffs face tough odds for passage as well. Set tariffs face tough odds for passage as well. So through the tariffs, President has he has authority to set the tariffs, and Congress has authority to cancel the tariffs when they deem their president's actions imposing tariffs threaten national security. So it's a tough situation. Well, that's it. Thanks for listening and have a wonderful Monday. Bye-bye.